Great Pastor Koju.
General.
I'm always at your service. You know that. When you say, I don't know who's the general now, whether it's
General.
I'm always at your service. You know that. When you say, I don't know who's the general now, whether it's
General.
I'm always at your service. You know that. When you say, I don't know who's the general now, whether it's
Don't worry, folks. We will get. Let me turn on the comments so you can chat. We're going to turn it off, but let me just make sure we get him right. Okay, it's coming back. Once he gets back on, I think we'll get it right now. That's it.
I'm back.
All right. So let me turn off the comment. How are you, sir?
I'm doing good. And how are you, Pastor Koju?
Very well, thank you.
You're the man.
Discussion this evening. So I'll get to the questions.
All right. Well, how are you doing in any case?
I'm very well, thank you.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you very well, loud and clear.
Okay. Someone saying to me, you haven't said much. And I said, but Pastor Koju, they're telling me I haven't said much. But I said, but Pastor Koju has said much.
I don't want
So let me finish. So they said, but that's Pastor Koju. I said, yes, but that's our voice. If he's speaking, I don't need to speak. I'm listening. You're the man.
All right. Okay. We're good to go, right?
Yeah, I'm good to go.
All right. So we're going to various areas. We have an hour, so I'll try and shoot fast. Okay. So the first question is a basic question I usually ask all my guests. They say diligence is doing small things consistently. until something big happens. So what are the little things you practice daily, consistently did over the years, outside public gains that has resulted in the grace that rests upon your life today?
So has any big thing happened yet in my life?
Who are products of your belief?
I'm still coping with the little. but on a serious note, Dr. Koju, I think that is something we do need to address. In today's world, someone saying to me, people are expecting very rapid results. You haven't said much. People want to know. And I said, but Pastor Koju, get big. They're telling me I hadn't said forget that there are some principles like you are talking about now. Remember the fastest man who ever lived? The fastest man who's alive, Usain Bolt, when he did 100-meter dash in less than 10 seconds. And that made him the fastest man alive. And he got a medal. And people were saying, this man has beaten a world record in under 10 seconds. But the truth was that race was not won in the performance. The race was won in the preparation. So I'm agreeing with you that oftentimes people look to the performance but forget that there is a preparation. The hours of training, weightlifting, a restricted diet, the coaching, those were the things that naturally led to the great performance. And the same it is, especially in the work we do. Behind the scenes, the discipline. Now, I know these are principles, so I cannot say that I have arrived, because these times away from the public eye are the times God uses to prepare his people for the public ministry. Away from the glare of the crowd, that is where the work happens. So those who would achieve something great need to understand this principle. I think, remember the story of when there was an argument over leadership in Israel, and Moses told Aaron, why don't you get your rod, your own branch, and everyone's branch overnight? It was in the darkness. It was the darkness that prepared Aaron's rod for the burden in the morning. So that's my message. For me, it's been obedient to little things by God's grace, walking with God in the area of discipline, walking with God in very little things. The repetition of little things we're doing, the pain, the tears, those are the things I believe are prepared for the public eye.
All right. The second question is, you have been involved in various community development efforts, especially with segments of society that suffer a lot of neglect, such as drug abuse and homelessness, to name a few. First thing is, why have you focused on this?
Well, I think for me, God has
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm saying, so for me, God has given me an understanding of church so that we're not out there just doing programs, but we're driven by a sense of mission. We're driven by a sense of purpose. Paul said to the intent that unto principalities and powers to be made known through the church, God's manifold wisdom. I think one version says God's complicated, many-sided wisdom, in all of its variety and innumerable aspects. So that God's plan for the church was to show wisdom. So you go to marriage, you see the mind and the wisdom of God. You go to leadership, you see the wisdom of God. You go to government, you see the wisdom of God. You go to business, and you go to what people have termed the mountains. And in each of these areas, what we should see should be the expression of the wisdom of God. And church, as we see it, just happens to be the gathering of the people of God, where we are equipped, where we worship, where we declare the centrality. But nowhere in the Bible do we see church as being restricted to the walls. We are salt, we are light, we are cities set on a hill, we are the mountain of God, we are kings, we are priests, we are ambassadors, we are temple. The Bible describes us as so many things, so that we're soldiers. And what do soldiers do when they come into a country? They take over, they occupy. You and I know that the term for church, originally the ecclesia, was never supposed to be people who sit down and clap and sing in church. That's a part of it. But ecclesia speaks of the Roman concept of government. When the Romans conquered the world, they went everywhere and took over the world. And everywhere they went, they left the imprint of Rome everywhere. So you could see Rome everywhere. So the same way, the imprint of the church is to be seen everywhere. Then depends on the gifting, depends on the gift, on the calling of the individual of the local assembly. You can see, like in you, Pastor Kojo, we can tell your grace is in the area of government. So as you're building an army, we can tell you're in government. We can tell you're into nation building. It's just clear what you carry. So different people carry different gifts. But in the area of social services, I feel that because the local church gathers in a location, we need to take responsibility for the environment. So it could be that we are feeding communities, providing food relief, helping the young ones, helping those on drugs, helping whosoever. In the context of the community, it could be feeding the environment. So when we talk about community service, I think every church should be involved in social services, in addition to its calling to impact some aspects of society. So this is what drives me. So in our case, I guess because of my background as a medical doctor and because of my own desire to help the poor, I am driven in that regard. And so that when we the church in its totality operating, we should see the imprint of God wherever the church is. So Jesus did not really go to church. Adam and Eve did not go to church. So in our case, but that's because of why do we need the church? The point is that wherever we think the desire to help the poor is the government of God. Because what Jesus said was repent for the kingdom. What John the Baptist said was the kingdom of God is at hand. Today the kingdom will be the government of God. So wherever we see church, we should look out and see the government of God. We should see the imprints, the impact of God wherever we are.
All right. From your experience, let me ask this. What advice will you share with the government and well-meaning individuals looking for a structured approach to creating a social safety net in Nigeria?
Well, one of the challenges we have faced is that we haven't seen a structured social safety network around us to the degree that we see in the Western world. So right now we're still seeing a lot of isolated works, which is good in its own way. So as I said, churches are doing the best they know to do. But a structured approach to creating this safety net requires a holistic approach to government, this sacred or this social side, and individuals need to come together and bring their strength. Take, for instance, COVID that's going on. That's an initiative between some private sector, some individuals, and government. But what happens, you find that most times you're working in isolation. Now, what we should do, I think, is this. We need to have the dialogue. We need to have the conversation. For instance, we as church, we have access to the grassroots. We know the people. We talk to the people. The government has capacity. So no matter what happens, no matter how hard we work, the government has the capacity. Nothing beats being in the place of policy. When you're in policy, you can impact and much more than the people working at grassroots level. But the mistake often is that government are trying to do grassroots level work that is not equipped to do. And for instance, you take the whole feeding program. Lagos did it best. They had good intentions. The government is a great guy. But then there was good relief going on at the grassroots level where the government doesn't quite have all of the structures in place. What they ought to have done was partnered with the social sector, partnered with the sacred sector to bring a synergy. And of course, we as well, I work with individuals. So we do our work, we're hearts people, we're grassroots people. But we need the people who can capture the data, who can analyze the data. We need the people who can create the systems. And this is where the individuals come in. So I feel what is missing is the synergy. But as it were, there's work in progress. And the more progress, the more we begin to see people come together to bring a synergy. And of course, we as well, I work
so
with...
we'll get to some other issues here. So let me, because I took questions from various people in various places. So someone asks, how have you been able to swiftly adapt to generational changes while staying consistent with your message, such that you have become both the pastor of the old generation and the new generation?
But thank you for that compliment. I really appreciate it. You know, it's a secret. You want to tap into my secret? Honestly, let me tell you what I think. What I think really is this. The wisest man on earth said, everything, there is a season and a time to every purpose under heaven. And so we've all talked about purpose. We've all talked about destiny. Now, what I teach is success is not really a destination. Success is an ongoing principle. We never really arrive. Success is being where God wants you to be at that particular time. And the will of God unfolds in our lives. Now, remember, Miles Monroe used to say to us that when God made man in time, he put man in time, measures life by time. Okay? So that time wasted before is life wasted. And time flows in seasons. Seasons come, seasons go. And in the natural, we make adjustment to seasons. In the rainy season, you have an umbrella. In the dry season, you change the way you dress. If you're living in a temperate climate, the same way in the winter, you make appropriate changes. So in that regard, life operates in time, and time operates in seasons. And Solomon said, the time to every purpose under heaven, a time to embrace one season, and a time to refrain from embracing another season. So that the challenge with many people, sometimes it could be a professional who loses his job, or a corporate person who is going through change, or it could be someone going through the maybe marital challenges and maybe after a divorce or a separation, or it could be a middle-aged person who's retired, or someone who recently retired. You find that God brings them into a new season, but then they are unable to refrain from embracing the fruit of the old season. So that the greatest need at that moment is reinvention. It's the whole concept of reinvention. So that by the grace of God, I have been able to journey with God through His purposes for my life. And in every season that confronts me, I look inwards to see if I have the grace, what it takes to deal with the next season. Then it becomes a partnership between God and I. So whether it's Abraham, God asked to leave Ur of the Chaldees, or whether it's Paul, who from being a Pharisee has now begun to preach Christ, or whether it's Noah, who becomes a builder, there is a change, there is a call to reinvention. And that might require some internal changes, and that might require some external changes. I've changed the way I dress. I mean, I have a beard now. And in fact, I was telling my son gave me a haircut today. So I said the next haircut is going to be, I'm going to go bald. I'm going to script everything. After COVID, I'm going to cut everything off and then just keep the mustache. And it's like, this is my post-COVID look. So honestly, it's making adjustments. So people need to learn to make adjustments. And one of the pains of reinvention is letting the old die. So one goes through the grief. You've got to let the old die. I used to say, it's not everyone in your house who's qualified to come with you to the top of the job future. So the person who would reinvent has to sense that time change has come, and they must be willing to let go of something. But remember, the reinvention is truly God's initiative. It begins with me. So it's not like we wake up one day. I mean, some people do it. They wake up some days, change their hairstyle, which is a great thing anyway. But true reinvention begins from within.
All right. Okay. What will you think is the role of the church in nation building in this country?
Wow, Pastor Kojo, that's your message.
I need counsel. I need counsel.
That's what you do best. I need to come and sit at your feet and just learn. What you have to things you know about. Okay, but honestly, my thoughts sometimes are a little different. Okay. And we're all saying the same thing, but I always like to look at it from a scriptural perspective. So when I look at, I read an article on the Road to Church of the Nations a while ago. Some politician, the Christian politician gave the teaching, and they looked at how the nation made the church. That was very powerful. But my approach is this, that when you look at the history of the nations, There's a concept called providential geography. Providential geography is the destiny of nations from God's perspective. So if you remember in Acts, it says in Acts that God started from one man, and he then created the whole world and created nations and determined their boundaries. Some version says determine the times of their rising and the times of their decline. And then it gives us the reason. He says that they may seek after him so that they may find him. So God has a purpose for nations. Now, he had a purpose for Egypt and Pharaoh. He used Egypt to declare his power. In fact, he told Moses, tell Pharaoh, Israel is my son. He had a purpose for Israel, the natural Israel at the time. And even though we, the church, say that we are Israel, we're God's Jews today. But natural Israel, God still has a plan. The calling and repentance, callings and giftings of God are without repentance. So my message is this. God has a plan for the nation. It's in his mind. He is the one who knows what the plan is. When Paul was going through some parts of Asia, the Holy Spirit said, no, it's not time in God's agenda. Don't go. They tried to go to a place called Bithynia. God said, no, don't go. I have my plan for them in the future. And then in the night, someone said Macedonia. So there was a plan for Macedonia at that time. So God has a plan for the nations. Clearly, he has a plan for this nation. We all know. And there always would be a contention over the plans of God. Whether it was Moses or Jesus, there's always a contention for the plans of God for a nation. So there is a contention for the growth of this nation. Now, what is God's plan then? God never does things without involving his people on earth. So if my people who are called by my name humble themselves and pray and seek my face and turn from their wicked ways, I will hear from heaven and I will heal not my people, I will heal their land. So that the place when there's discord, there's desolation, the nation is overrun by the enemy. The first place we must start is prayer. What Paul told Timothy is, first of all, let's pray for all men, pray for salvation. In specificity of prayer, kings, because they are critical to my plan, and I need the nations to have peace. So the first thing is prayer. Oftentimes people say, oh, there's too much prayer. There's never too much prayer. What the Bible says is, those of you who make mention of the Lord, those of you who pray, give him no rest and give yourselves no rest until he makes the city of the nation a praise, until he does what he has determined to do. So back to my concept of the role of the church in the nation. There is a plan, there is an agenda. The prophets pick up the mind of God, and we've all sensed that there's something God has done with this nation. But it begins with prayer. But we often end with prayer because we know what the Bible says. Apart from prayer, we know that righteousness exalts. Hold on a second. Okay. Can you hear me, Pastor Pojo? I hear someone came to tell me that they can't really hear me.
I can hear you.
Let me see. Okay. You can hear me?
I can hear you. Yeah.
All right. Okay. All right, so I was talking about prayer. So this is really stamina material, but since you asked, the next is that righteousness exalts a nation. Not only should we pray, but we must come to the place where righteousness is infused into the fabric of society. Who better has the value system of good governance? Who understands, who has a heart for the poor? Who has morality, integrity, love, honesty, decency? Those principles that if they are in the structure of society, begin to create an environment that makes for development. So we are not just to pray. How about morality? How about integrity? How about our civic responsibilities? How about doing the right thing? How about honesty in business? And who carries the grace, the heart to do the things? Is it not the church? So we pray, but we move from prayer to the place where we infuse the very fabric of society with the values of the kingdom. So when Jesus said, pray your kingdom come, it's not clouds. It is to see the value system of the kingdom infused in society. So remember, it's the church that prays. It's the church that then teaches. So the pulpit must begin to teach. So our message must move from just God wanting to bless to our responsibility. So the pastors must be involved in bringing the mind of God into society. Then, beyond that, there is a third level. And the third level is where we then come out of the church and we get involved in the process of governance. The country is not a theocracy. That means it's not God ruling, it's democracy. And there are principles of democracy. There's an electoral process. There are candidates. There's voting. And we should then know that though we pray, though we infuse society with our principles, when the righteous rule, the land rejoices. So it is the righteous in power who then begin to infuse those values into that mountain or into this whole concept of governance. So imagine if the Christians are the ones in places of government, in positions. So all the value system of good governance. And imagine if we, like you, Pastor Coach, you are teaching these things. And many Christians go into office and are not even aware what it entails. So the third is just for us to get involved, to know what happened, understand the processes, begin to vote, begin to prepare. Everyone else is preparing. But meanwhile, we who understand that the nation requires the mind of God, or the nation needs to be run by God and needs these people at the top, we should be the one preparing them. And then, so thirdly is that we're not just waiting to vote for people. No, we're not waiting to vote for people. We're not waiting to vote for those the system has thrown up. We are part of creating the people who are thrown up. And then lastly, we then prepare the people for office. Well, I hope that's not too lengthy.
No, very good, very good. All right, I want to get into something else now,
Okay.
quickly. Some people are telling me it was hard to hear you.
Yes, that's what they're telling me here as well.
I just saw some. All right. Let me ask. All right. So someone asks this. He says, I'm a Christian with a good heart. I serve at a high ranking level in my church, but I'm addicted to pornography and other things. What steps can I take to get out of this enslaving habit?
All right. Now, fortunately, there were many things that we did years ago without revelation. Many challenges we saw in church, we thought we could pray away. And there are some things that prayer would resolve, but the truth is, if someone fell down and broke a bone, fractured the bone, oh, and by the way, would you please, I don't want to get this picture of your mom and sorry, I just remember talking mentioned that. I'm so sorry. I just remember. I told your mom I was her best student. She said she couldn't remember. I said, Prof, I was okay. You love me. I was the tallest in the class, and you just love something about me. I tell you, I met you before I met you, so that's why I'm attached to you. You know, they're so good to me. In any case, as I was talking about, someone has a fracture, and then you begin to pray about the fracture. That is ridiculous. So the same way we're seeing that there are some issues that involve people that are a pathology. Pathology means it is a problem. So the person who has an addiction to pornography or to sex has a problem. It's like I work with drug addicts, and one of the great things people ask me is, why do you keep at it? Simple. Not only is it my way of passion, but addiction is a brain disease. It's a brain disease. It's not a moral problem. So that if you see an asthmatic, someone has recurrent chronic asthma, are you going to get angry with him when he has an asthmatic attack? He has some problems in his lungs. He needs attention. The same way, drug addiction in its fullness is a brain disease. The same way, addiction to sex, addiction to pornography, things that take you away from the defined standards of normalcy usually involve a change in the brain pathways. So that the person who thinks he can overcome his porn addiction by making a New Year resolution is mistaken. Number one, he needs to come to terms with the fact that I've got a problem. It's called insight. He needs insight. I've got a problem. I've got a fracture. I'm wheezing. I need external help. And that's where it begins. You must cry out for help. You must go to someone for help. For some cases, for some people, it just could be temptation, it could be bad habits, and they can put structures in place. So each person ought to know, I try, but I'm unable to stop this habit. You ought to know when it's an addiction, when it's a problem with your brain pathways, and you then need to seek a therapist. And then a therapist would help us walk through the issues of that addiction, which may involve helping people deal with porn site. And for most people, they need to know why the addiction is not good for them. They need to know why there is a problem. They need to know if it's a married person, there's probably a problem in their marriage. So these are the things a therapist or a psychologist would help the person deal with.
All right. I'm getting messages here. They say the problem might be that you have a device on that is creating an echo.
Yeah. Okay. What I'm going to do? Let me go to. Let me try Wi-Fi. I hope it won't log off.
No, then I'll re-add you. There's no problem.
Okay.
So I'll add him just to make sure that we're not. Okay.
Is this better?
Right. I think so. I can hear you clearly now. Can you hear me clearly?
I can hear you.
All right. So that's good. This sounds much better. All right. Now I want to ask you also this. You preached once about Noah, who may have suffered from post-traumatic stress disorder when after the flood, you find him drinking, getting drunk. So my question is, we sometimes go through difficult times. We may even survive those things and even appear to have come out victorious, but the process may have damaged certain things in us where we come out trusting people less, or say we are more prone to anger and other things. What steps can we take while we're going through a situation to avoid this type of traumatic or these disorders that can evolve from it?
Okay. Can you still hear me?
Very well. It's much better now.
So where's the echo coming from? Pardon?
Yeah.
Okay. So these are my thoughts. I mean, we're all going through this whole COVID-19 crisis. And honestly, from the moment of the lockdown, it's been very difficult for many people, as you and I know. And the first couple of weeks, I spent time with our leaders, you know, trying to navigate through the challenges. And honestly, Pastor Koji, we must commend your voice because you are out there speaking, and do appreciate what you did. Now, from all the reports, okay, someone sent a message that the echo may be from your phone.
From my phone?
Yes. Yes.
All right.
Yes, you know, when you have two devices, sometimes
I think. All right.
yeah, hello, can you hear me now?
I can hear you.
Yeah, it's better now. So it must have been
All
the
right.
devices you're using.
Okay.
Yeah, better for me. No travel, airlines shut down. That's major. That's major. Then people locked in. It was like an earthquake. And then, like, you know, like an earthquake comes sometimes with an aftershock. And many times in earthquake prone areas, it's not the initial earthquake that brings the building down. Sometimes it's the aftershock. So here was a health crisis, global, intense, heavy, and then people began to lose their jobs. That's an aftershock. And then the social crisis, another aftershock. And then fear, and then kids are not in school. Just there's so much people are dealing with. And that's why it's understandable if people begin to exhibit the symptoms of stress. Because when you're stressed, a hormone called cortisol, chemical called cortisol, and cortisol can damage your system. So there you have people who are stressed. And when you're stressed, we begin to see signs of stress, from loss of appetite to insomnia, inability to sleep, to irrational behavior. There's a lot people have gone through. So we're seeing domestic abuse, sexual abuse, a lot of frustration. And when people are cooped together, anger is the symptom. So all of these things are the symptoms of stress. So when I preached on Noah, I had two things in mind. Number one, learn to cope with the stress, learn to distress, learn to make the phone calls, learn to talk to people, learn to exercise, whatever it takes. If you can, walk on the corridor, step outside, for many marriages, find different rooms, find ways to de-stress. So that was one message I had. Then the second message was, remember, there's still a post-COVID world. That means as we deal with the fear, come into the place of faith, come into the place of courage, and plan for the world ahead. So I preached that message on Noah because Noah was a good example of a man who survived the flood. Then post the flood changed his world. Then post the flood, he then must have had challenges. So I just used that to illustrate the fact that the way the flood changed the world of Noah is the way coronavirus has changed our world. And the issues we have to deal with, from reinventing ourselves, loss of job, inability to travel, all the issues we're going through, we need to prepare for it. Now, the message you're talking about then is, in the stress, when there's a stressor, when there's something that bothers us, like COVID-19, we try to distress. But in the event that the crisis ends, and weeks after, you still have the symptoms of anger, frustration, sleeplessness, anxiety, irritability, then again, it's time to talk to a therapist. It's time to talk to a counselor who can then help you walk through those issues. The majority of people, when the stressor is removed, they go back to normal. But in event the stressor is removed and the symptoms are still there, then I guess a therapist would help work through the issues.
All right, let me just ask you this. What do you, in terms of the post-COVID season, particularly for churches, do you see any way this might affect churches going forward? The behavioral pattern of people?
Definitely. See, when we spoke about a post-COVID world, there was an expectation, there was an anticipation that maybe there will be a clinical solution, vaccination, some eradication, and then people would find a way to deal with life afterwards. But what has made it a little difficult now, which in itself is another aftershock, is that people were in a lockdown situation for 2 months because they heard there's a virus out there. And social distancing, lockdown, mitigates the effects and stops the spread. Then all of a sudden, they hear we're easing the lockdown. But Has the virus disappeared? No. So the virus is still out there. Yes, it may stay with us for a long time. That means a change to a lifestyle. So I know there's a debate today on whether churches should open or not. I personally don't think the debate is one of the purpose of the church. My position is we cannot and should not even compare the church with markets, shops, banks. The role of the church is so clear. The church is here to meet the social, emotional, spiritual needs of people. The church impacts the world. The church takes care of the poor. The church is a spiritual entity. So how can there's no comparison. So in my mind, the reason for the lockdown was medical. It was to mitigate the spread. Okay? So the question now is, no more lockdown. So should we gather? Then there'll be considerations. Clearly, a lot of people are meeting online, which is a great thing. And I have a position, as you said, Pastor Kboju, the church was never locked down. The kingdom of God cannot be locked down. The kingdom of God never stops. There is a mission. We have a mission to reach the whole world, and the mission has a method. And in every season, and that's why we must keep reinventing ourselves. In every season, the method may change. And there was a season where we used the building. But the expediency of the times, when there is a health crisis, required that we find other methods, required that we reinvent ourselves. So I've done more technology in 2 months than I've done in 2 years. So now lockdown has been eased. We were not locked down before because it was a punitive measure. No, we're locked down because of health considerations to limit the spread. But then people want to gather. Well, some want to gather. Some desire to gather. So the government says, gather. The considerations then would be, the virus is still out there. Do I want to use a microphone and pass it on to my worship leader? Will she pick it up? Will the ushers want to hug the people? Are we going to wear masks? Should there be social distancing? How many services should we have? How about the children? How about hygiene? How about the bathrooms? So there are considerations. So there must be a conversation. In fact, are people ready? People are still quite anxious. There's still some challenges. So in a sense, we're still in transition. And I don't think we're out of it yet. So there's a conversation to be had. There are considerations to be made. And it's an ongoing conversation. Not a question of us just jumping back. So will the church change? Absolutely. We're all in a season of adapting. We're adapting. We've got to be flexible, checking what works, checking what doesn't work. All we do know is that God is using this time to bring us into a place of re-engineering. It's, as we all said, it's a reset. Checking to see what is it that God is trying to achieve, what is his mind, and how do we make the adjustments. But honestly, our method, our mission doesn't change, but the method may begin to shift.
Let me let me ask you, have you discovered during this season more effective ways of doing things you used to do now during this time?
Yes, I'll be honest with you. I actually think for me, I got a little busier post-COVID. I'm a little zoomed out now, though. So what I've had to do, I've had to have my staff just help me arrange my Zoom meetings, you know. And so sometimes I use my phone, sometimes I use my iPad, but I've had to become more organized. So I'm using my time better. I'm actually more strategic at this time, and I'm able to reorder my days and prioritize my time. So in a sense, this period has been very good. I don't recall in the past taking naps during the day. Now I sleep during the day. In the so at some point it's like, okay, time to go and sleep.
Okay, so let me just, since I just call so a person with a small church, he doesn't have he believes he doesn't have the infrastructure. What will you tell him?
Well, the truth is this.
And the reason is this. That, I mean, they say that the COVID could affect small businesses. So small churches also are feeling that this thing could I mean, their members could be watching TG Jakes and on Sunday morning, and they might. So what would you say?
They were watching for you. They were watching for you. Well, what everybody was watching. Well, the truth is this: as we all know, there were people who had online ministries. There were digital churches even before COVID.
Yeah.
So the truth was that what COVID did was it was a catalyst to push us into this world of technology. So these strategies, technology was always there, but many people did not embrace technology. So if you ask, God said to Moses, what is in your hands? If we were to ask most people that question, it's a phone. Today, people have smartphones. So people have technology. Now, for whatever reason, not everyone was able to embrace this concept of technology. But we then have this challenge. The truth is to honestly reevaluate your methods, find out what was working, find out what wasn't working, and then begin to adapt. This is the time to invest in knowledge, invest in technology, and you are young, invest in people, invest in young people. They will create the solutions. And it's never too late to start. As they say, whenever you wake up is your morning. So there's always something we can do. We can use WhatsApp. So we can start somewhere. So it's one thing to grieve the fact that we didn't have the resources or the investment in technology, but then we can start wherever we are. For me, the challenge is really churches, like in some of our expressions, God bless Nigeria, where access to data is not very easy, digital penetration is low, they don't have access to infrastructure. Now they don't have phones. Now at that level, it's a challenge. So we look for adaptive ways. Radio, free data, television. So I feel there's always a way. As I said, our mission never changes, but our method changes, and we can find a way to work the mind of God into what we're doing.
All right, I'm going to ask 2 more questions. The first one here definitely is not for me, because what the question says is, What are the reasons why you don't honor most invite? A young pastor sent this to me. To many places you are invited to many. Now, it's not me because you're not my friend. But they said, Pastor Tony, that they need you to come and speak to them, and they say you're not.
I honor all. In fact, let's be honest, Pastor Kojo, I invite myself to your programs.
No, it's not me, but they said the people are saying they want it to me.
I invite myself. I'll say, Pastor Kojo hasn't invited me. Okay, it's time for a call, Pastor Kojo, I'm here.
Nobody said. Ah! All right, what 3 books have you read that transformed your thinking?
Okay, I don't want to sound cliche, but honestly,
Bible.
Yeah, I mean, it's cliche, but if I didn't say Bible, it would be strange. Yes, so that would be the book that transformed my thinking the more. And I'll tell you why. I've done a thesis in the origin of man, and we'd written on the principles of evolution. We studied Charles Darwin, and in my mind, man came from the apes. Man came from monkeys. And when I got born again, my medical mind found it very difficult to accept the story. In fact, in anthropology, we called it the theory of special creation. And it was written off because it had no scientific basis. So we would look at all the theories of creation, sonic boom, sonic bang, evolution, then get to special creation, that a God created the world. And it's like, please forget about that. I then get born again and then read in the beginning, God made heaven and earth. It was a bit of a challenge for me personally. But then the more I read the Bible, I remember Hebrews where it says, by faith, we understand that the worlds were framed by the word of God. Oh! That just was it for me, that the world is by faith. I must embrace this whole concept of creation. And you asked what affected me. That the Bible really affected me, because not just as it's like in medicine. So I want to do a good surgery. I go to maybe Bailey's textbook of surgery. I go to Gray's Anatomy, which is a big book, and it tells me how to do my surgery. And then I want to maybe do some psychoanalysis or psychotherapy. I go to Freud or some other book. But then we all knew that life was deeper, and many of us were searching. So what the Bible did was it opened up a dimension I wasn't aware of. Because as far as I was concerned, medicine did very well with the body. So you had diabetes, you had a fracture, you had pneumonia, medicine could do its bit. You had psychological issues, psychiatry could do its bit. But there were spiritual issues. And as a medical doctor, I would sit in a clinic. I remember once sitting in a clinic in Arrow, in the hospital. And a man came in, he said something moves from his head, from his forehead to the back, jumps to his elbow, then jumps to his knee, jumps to his back. If you heard that, medicine has a term for it, and it's like this person is neurotic. But then, in opening the Bible, I'm realizing that it's not just viruses and bacteria that exist. They are these spiritual entities. They're called demons. They're called evil spirits. And the way we give antibiotics or give injections, the way you deal with that pathology is speaking. So I found the Bible to be a textbook that helped me deal with the spiritual side of life. So it wasn't just about preaching a sermon. It's a book that gave me an understanding of the totality of life. And that's why one other book I read that was very good for me was Watchman Nee, The Spiritual Man. So Watchman Nee then took spirituality and brought it to anatomy and began to teach about the spirit, the soul, the mind, the will, the intellect. So that book was very good, because at the time I knew that there was now the Spirit of God is in me. I always wondered, where is it in me? Because my surgical mind would think, what compartment is that spirit in you? Where is it? So what that book did, The Spiritual Man, it helped me to deal with the issues that gave me conflicts about human emotions. Then A.W. Pink. So it's not really like book, but author. So A.W. Pink was also very good for me in my early days. At the time I got born again, I was a Joshua man, just preaching Joshua, the Joshua general. I was just screaming Joshua every day. And at some point I ran out of revelation on Joshua. I remember one pastor saying to me, he says, all you talk about is Joshua. I was just screaming, Moses is dead, Joshua arise. So when I ran out of revelation, I ran into a book by A.W. Pink called Joshua. Honestly, I still have that book. I've had it for like maybe over 20 years. And that book became a library, of information and revelation. So 3 books.
All right, so let me close by asking you, what's your most impactful movie you've ever watched?
Shall I tell you a secret?
Well, you don't watch movies.
This COVID period, like, yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, okay, no evil, for thou with me, thy rod and thy staff. Guess the 2 things that have kept me, my Bible and Netflix. Let me make a confession. I've watched some really crazy movies this period. So my son has been so good. So some days I want to distress. I'll say today, what shall we watch today? So, and I love the action and adventure movies. So my wife has come down one day, seen all the fighting. So what are you guys doing? I say, dearest, this is how I distress. In fact, the other day I was watching one mad movie. It's the maddest movie ever. It's called The Night Came For Me. They combine Chinese Kung Fu with murder, adventure, everything in one. But at some point, I knew I would have nightmares that night. So I said, the Holy Spirit has to help me curtail my movie watching. But seriously, I've watched some very good movies. But of all the movies I've watched, the one I've taught with the most has been 300, really. Why I like 300? Yes, I liked it because I've used it over and over again to teach the timeless principles of leadership. So that'll be one movie. I mean, I've watched many movies, sometimes for entertainment, for having fun, but the one I've used to teach principles. I've used Noah. I've used the Revenant as well. Yeah, the one of the bear, the man who fought the bear. But really, 300 has been good. Okay.
Thank you very much, sir. It was a wonderful discussion. Thank you so much.
Thank you too. So thank you I really enjoyed it, and I hope we can do this more often.
I'm sure anytime. Anytime.
So you are
the big guy. You're the big guy.
Okay, my turn to ask the questions next. Is that okay? So I'll do the asking next.
Ask me a question.
No, not today. The next time we meet again. And all those guys who have been asking, all those guys, I have a suspicion you haven't given them my email address. All those guys asking to talk to me. Maybe they send you the message and you don't send it to me. Because everybody you sent to me, you sent me to Abuja, remember? And I went.
I know. I was shocked when I saw it. That Pastor Tony doesn't.
That's not true. I go wherever God leads me. That's not true. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Bye.